What's up, YouTube? So today I'm talking about something pretty weird. It's more theoretical than practical, but the results can be pretty good for sound design. So, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the plugin called Disperser by Kilohertz. It's essentially a stack of all-pass filters which emulates multiband processing. So, a user who happens to be an absolute technical wizard in my Discord channel by the name of Cancel messaged me one day and said, hey, you've got equilibrium, right? It has this free phase mode. What happens if you recreate Disperser inside it and flip the phase into reverse phase mode? So for those who are not understanding, I'm going to give you a bit more of an easier to understand visual right now. But essentially what we're doing is we're reversing the effect of Disperser. And we call it Reversperser. So like I said, it's not a very practical thing because of various problems, which I'm going to talk about. However, that being said, for offline processing, you can get some really great results. So this is not the same as just taking Disperser and phase reversing the result. Essentially, the sound sounds like reversing the sound, processing it through Disperser, and then reversing it again. So it's a really weird process, and yeah, let me show you why I think this is really cool. The problem, however, like I said, this is more practical and probably not something that you guys are going to be trying, but I just want to outline like how cool this process is, and maybe it can inspire something, or who knows. Is that the only thing that I've found that's possible to do this with is Equilibrium by DMG Audio, and that EQ is not cheap.
Holy sh!
A lot of people ask me why I spent so much money on this particular EQ, but it's for reasons like this. It's by far the most advanced EQ. It doesn't have certain features like dynamics and that kind of thing, but when it comes to just raw EQ and playing with the frequencies and the phase, it's by far the most advanced. So anyway, enough blabbering, let's look at the technical explanation. Okay, so this is a plugin called Plugin Doctor. What it is it allows you to load other plugins and monitor the phase and frequency response and various other things as well. You don't need this plugin, it's not essential, but it's a really good tool for me to be able to visualize for you folks exactly what's going on with stuff like the frequency or the phase of particular plugins. So here we've got Disperser by Kilohertz, and we've got Equilibrium. As we can see by these two lines in Plugin Doctor, the pink line represents the phase response of Disperser, where the red line represents the phase response of Equilibrium. So I want to show you quickly in Equilibrium how we can set up a Disperser. Essentially what we need to do is we need to add an EQ node, right-click over here, and then in one of the HPF or LPF, we need to select all pass over here. And essentially that just adds one all pass node. So by default, my Equilibrium is actually in full minimum mode, which is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get a kind of cleaner sound. I guess it's the kind of midway ground between linear phase and analog style EQs. For those who don't know, depending on the style of programming of EQ or the mode that you choose to use your EQ, there's certain trade-offs. You either have some kind of timing trade-off or you have some kind of phase trade-off. Full minimum is a kind of mix of both. It's a little bit of each. Whereas I find like linear phase tends to sound, it tends to smear the transients and that kind of stuff, but that's getting too technical. What we want to do is we want to set it to free phase mode. What free phase mode is it allows us to choose the amount of linearity for each of the nodes in Equilibrium. So this like little knob over here in the setup menu becomes the linear response for that node. And so if we set it into the middle over here, it turns this particular node into a linear phase node. As you can see here, well, it's as close as I'm going to get it here with the mouse. We can shift to get it a bit closer like that. So this allows us to have certain nodes in Equilibrium, linear phase, certain modes, minimum phase, or we can actually just adjust the phase as we please. One thing that's particularly interesting that you'll notice here is when you push it past the 0, it then goes into the reverse or into the negative. So this is different to simply just phase reversing the sound, and I'm going to show you a little bit later why that is. But essentially what this allows us to do is this little node here. This is essentially the magic of the process that we're going to do today. So anyway, let's just go ahead and double click over here. And what that does is it just duplicates these bands. And so let's just see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So we can actually select all of them by holding Shift, and then we can actually move them as well like this. So we can line it up a little bit closer to what we're seeing in this plugin. And if we use this Q, we'll also be able to get it a little bit closer. So that's about as close as we're going to get it for the moment. So now what we can do is we can jump into Disperser, and we can choose more amount over here. And then to emulate more of those, we just simply need to add more of these all-pass stacks like this. And we can keep going and keep going. Okay, so that's essentially how to recreate Disperser. What I want to do is I want to show you now, if we load here Snap Heap, which is essentially like the kilohertz container plugin. And then inside Snap Heap, I'm going to load Disperser. And then here, what we can do is we can use the channel mixer. Which one is it? Channel mixer. And this has a preset called invert phase. So notice here, the inversion of the phase, notice how it simply just flips that pattern upside down, right? But the free phase mode, when we adjust this, it's different because it's not actually flipped upside down, it's flipped back to front. So see here, instead of going down, up, it still goes up, but it's just that the shape of the pattern has now changed. Does that make any sense? So it's a bit of a weird explanation, but let's go back into Snap Heap and turn off this so you can see it is actually different. You're basically creating an upward ramp and then a downward. Whereas flipping the phase of Disperser still creates a downward ramp. It just flips the phase. I don't know. Anyway, so enough of the technicals. What we're going to do is we're going to save this preset. Is it in? Yeah, it's in free phase mode. Cool. Save the preset as Reversperser. Then what I want to do is I want to remove this. We can actually get into some context. You can actually hear what it sounds like. So I'm just going to grab a bunch of random samples here. We can grab like some kicks, some snares, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so how weird is that? It's like you still hear the sustain of the kick, but it's like the transient is flipped backwards. So I want to compare this to what Disperser sounds like. So like I said, it's completely different, like contextually. We could use this for all sorts of weird experimental textures and stuff like that. One thing to note though is that it is incredibly high in latency. So you can't really stack it up to here. I mean, if we look here, milliseconds is 743 milliseconds. If we duplicate this, you'll see now we're going to, we hit 1486 in latency compensation, right? And there's like almost a second of like when I hit the button to press play, it actually starts playing. So it's definitely not the kind of thing that you can use in a live context or, you know, while you're live sound designing or something like that. But as an offline process, it can be super interesting. So another thing to note is that Bitwig's max latency compensation is 2 seconds. So, oh, that can also cause plugin crashes. So if you go over that, it's going to stop compensating for the latency. So you're going to get weird timing things. But sometimes that can be cool for sound design, you know? But I think the most interesting use case for something like this is just on kind of raw waveforms. So let's just pop open something like Vital. You can drag this onto Vital. And then what I want to do is just put in one long note. is subtle. It just kind of makes it sound more wobbly and reversey than like a traditional disperser, specifically on these kind of more sound effecty type of sounds. So let's combine this with a little like feedback from the delay, maybe some pitch in the feedback chain. What on earth? Anyway, awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you folks know of any way that we can achieve a similar kind of effect without equilibrium or some other EQ that has a very similar free phase mode, let me know in the comments or jump into my Discord and also just pop a message over there. I'm sure the community will really, really appreciate that. Like I said, equilibrium is not cheap. So anyway, also a big thanks to Cancel for just being a general technical wizard and inspiring this idea. And thank you for watching, and thank you for liking and subscribing. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.